Michael has come over tonight and he's going to take off from where he left off. He come to the presentation last year. He very amazingly ran through the entire Scaled Agile Framework in the session, and now we're going to be looking at some of the things, some of the questions that came out of that. So there's a few questions there, some people straight back to me. I've fed those on to Michael, and he's going to present and answer some of those questions at the program portfolio level. So over to Michael. Thanks very much.
Okay, starting. So thank you very much, Simon, also for setting this up. And I think Simon mentioned one of the big things of these meetups, of these events, is the discussion afterwards, the networking, which we can have. And I hope, as a follow-up of Inbar's session, I can give maybe some additional information, some pointers, and maybe some reason for discussion. And I'm really looking forward to the pizza, which is coming later, and some drinks, and having individual discussions and challenges. So it's great to have a lot of people here. We have people here from Brazil, Manuel coming over, so very, very international group. And as you can hear, my accent is also a little bit strange. So I'm originally from Switzerland, living now in New York, somewhere in between Europe, which I'm supporting out of a Scaled Agile perspective, and the headquarters of Scaled Agile in Boulder. So I have good overlapping time for both of the time zones. A little bit of background for me. I was always fascinated by complex systems, like helicopters. So I did an apprenticeship as an electronic engineer, and after the 4 years, my boss sponsored me a 5 minutes helicopter flight. So something like this, a little bit a smaller one. And it was so fascinating to me that I wanted to become a pilot. So first I had to studied systems engineering. I worked as a business analyst, as a software developer, moved into project management, and I was a waterfall project manager. And I've seen some very successful waterfall projects, and I've seen some big failures. I've then done the transition more into the agile world and started to support organizations. How can you do this sometimes very painful transition from a traditional way more to an agile way? And then I had enough money after some years of working to make my pilot license, and it's basically very similar to agile. There are a lot of parallels. Agile is very, very disciplined, but you have a high degree of freedom in here. Same with flying. There are a lot of policies, checklists, but I can reach great goals, great locations with flying with that helicopter. But I'm very grateful to have some people making some mistakes before me. So for example, just firing up the engine, the turbine of this helicopter, if you do it the wrong way, it can just cost you 100K. So it's pretty helpful to have a kind of a checklist in place, and some guidance how to do that. And then we have a second point, going to great locations. That's top of Europe, on the mountains, and a lot of my passengers wanted to fly there and see that place. You have nice view of the mountains, the glaciers, and sometimes you can land there, depending on the passengers, the weight, the weather, so a lot of the environmental conditions which are important here. So you have to adapt to change. And we typically have a contract. Yes, you fly me there, we will have a drink up here, enjoy the view, and then we will fly back. But when we fly up, we oftentimes cross another famous mountain in Switzerland, and that's the north face of the Eiger. That's a very, very famous wall for climbers. And it's very fascinating to fly with the helicopter into this wall and see what's going on there. So not crashing into the wall, but going pretty close, because then you really see the size. And there is one fascinating point in here which people want to see. So there is a train going up here in the wall to top of Europe. Who was up there before, top of Europe? So have you stopped at the station there? In the train? So what you see at the red box is basically there's a train station in the wall, and you see these are the mountains from the train station, and people look out there. And when I have passengers in the helicopter, of course they want to see these windows and maybe wave a little bit to see the people in there. And sometimes it's not possible to go there because you see there could be some clouds, some winds, some environmental conditions which are blocking us to go there. So we have to discuss with the customer who wants to fly there. What do we do? How can we adapt? And I have to have a lot of options and ideas and procedures in place how I react in certain situations when there is some clouds or whatever is going on. So it really helped me when I started to fly, when I learned. First I had a flight instructor who helped me to make mistakes. I learned from mistakes. It was very, very helpful. And he really just helped to correct them if it was very, very close to not a nice situation. But sometimes what we did is just, we flew and he just turned off the engine. That's one of the standard procedures you have to train because that's typically not happening, but as a pilot you need to be trained. How can I land this device, this complex system? And one of the elements here is really to stay stable and keep calm, because then you get the best results. And that's one of the learnings we can have as well in projects, because if it's going out of control, we start to become a little bit of hectic, and maybe we add more people at the end. And it's helpful to keep calm and have a stable system, which really helps us to deliver value. So by learning it, I was very happy to have a kind of a framework in place which showed me checklist stuff. So I didn't have to start to learn stuff from here. I was able to start here and continuously improving from that point up. And that's very similar to Agile and the Scaled Agile Framework. It's something which is proven. Companies are using it. Companies are working with it. There were some mistakes. We are continuously learning and improving that and put that into the framework. So it gives us a starting position to address certain problems. So before I go into some details of the framework, I want to understand, you're my customers at the end. I quickly want to understand you. So what's your experience level with SAFe? And we do that on a scale from 1 to 5. 5 very experienced, 1 no experience at all. So who is very experienced in SAFe, is an expert, and a 5? 2, 3, 4? 3? 2? 1? Okay. So a lot of people who, you've maybe read a little bit about it, right? Not a lot of experience. Who was in the session with Inbar in October? Good, a few people. And we will do a quick run-through, and that's an idea at the moment. We do a quick run-through to the framework, about 10 minutes. Then we go into one part, which was one of the feedbacks, and also I had several meetings last week here in London. How can we run release trains and do release planning with big groups, big room planning? So we'll spend a little bit of time there, if it's of interest. And then we quickly touch the portfolio level. That's the other feedback we got from last time. We should cover that a little bit more, but maybe we go more into one-to-one sessions at the end. And then I will talk a little bit about implementation of SAFe. How can you do that? How can you implement it? And we customize it a little bit to your needs, ask questions if you have along the way, and we certainly have some time at the end. How many SPCs, SAFe program consultants, do we have in the room? 1, 2, 3. For the other ones, look at these hands and people and faces. They are the experts in the room. So if you have questions, they can also support you on there. So SAFe program consultant is really the change agents who are supporting organizations in implementing the framework. So on the framework, we have 4 core values: code quality, program execution, alignment, and transparency. Let's start with code quality. What's happening if you have big systems, you have individual components which you need to pull together, and the components have a bad quality? What's happening if you want to integrate them? Takes a long time. Do you get a good quality out of that?
Yeah.
Typically not. So if you want to build a car and if you have bad parts, not high quality parts, you cannot build a high quality car. So build quality in the framework is a very, very key element. And that's why it's one of the core values, and you see it down here, code quality. You need to have a certain quality in there. Then we have program execution, and we will talk about that during the release planning part. It's basically the heartbeat of the framework and of the agile release train. We have transparency. We want to have transparency that we see what's going on. We want to be able to build trust. In organizations, we need to have a culture of accepting failure. We can learn from mistakes. It's very powerful. When flying, I made a lot of mistakes. I learned from them. One of them was, once my flight instructor told me, there's a tree down there, let's land beside that tree. And I didn't have the glasses at that point, and I was not able to see the tree. So one of the learnings was to get glasses afterwards. But there was another experience. There in the mountains, you oftentimes have these wires from cable trains or whatever, and they are very, very hard to see. And one time he also told me to land at a specific place, and he really kept me busy asking security questions. What's happening if this light goes on? What do you do in that situation? And I had to do my recognition part, and he's always distracting me. So and I did my approach, and at a certain point, he just took over control. And he told me, there is a wire up there. So if I wouldn't have taken control, you would be dead now. So that really helped me to focus on the right things. So making mistakes really helps to improve. And you have to build that culture, that transparency to do that. The last one is alignment. Who of you is from London? Good. Remember how you came here, how you came into the building, you found this room, the stairs up there, you came down to this room, we have a window here, and we'll do a quick experiment here. So we have a job as a group, as a team, to move that podium here as one of the groups. And transparency builds some trust, but now you have to trust me a little bit, and I will promise you it will not hurt. If you could close your eyes for about 30 seconds, I will let you know when you can open it again. And then point with your hand in the direction of north. With the hand, now. Keep your eyes closed. Very clear sign. Keep your hand up and open your eyes. And look around the room. So we see over there, all the directions, right? So what's happening now if we have to pull this podium in the direction of north? What would happen? You break it, yeah? Everyone is pulling in a different direction. Maybe we will end up moving it a little bit in one of the directions. And did that happen in projects? That everyone had a different understanding what we want to achieve? Ended up in different directions. So what's happening if we align, if we agree? I have, by the way, no idea where north is here. But just if we agree, that's north for us. We define that as our north. We align on that one, we all pull on that thing, and we create a huge power to move that podium over here. And that's what we want to do in the framework with the alignment, with the release planning. We want to have all the people have the same understanding. Where are we heading to? And then we get the real results, real business results. So on the framework, maybe you've seen we have Agile in there, we have product development flow. Anyone read the product development flow book from Don Reinertsen? How was that to read? It's easy to go to sleep with the book, right? Oh, I had to read it several times, and I'm always going back for some of the ideas. But a lot of this information is in the framework, which you can see over there. A lot of lean thinking, and you also see that it's basically developing. The first version was 2012, then we have 2013, 14, version 3, where we had a big makeover of the portfolio. Why did we have to do that? We learned. We learned. We experienced new stuff. We had feedback from the community. And I can guarantee you there will be version 4.0, and it will happen this year. Because we have a lot of additional learnings which we put into the framework. So it's really coming from customers, from organizations, proven practices which are going in here.
At that point, are you only looking at organizations adopting SAFe, or are you looking at the other organizations, the large organizations that are adopting Agile and Scale?
We are looking, basically we are talking to a lot of customers. We have the SBCs going out, giving us feedback. We are in forums, we have talks. I've just visited 1 week of every day some customers in Europe to see where do they have the challenges. And one of the things we've seen that it started with a lot of team agile, then it moved up to the program, and then it moved up to the portfolio, what we see now. That's why we put a big change on the portfolio level. So we try to address the real problems of companies.
So are you going to like Larman insights, the places where Larman's kind of like in a large scale implementation as well, studying them, or is it mainly through your customers, the SAFe implementers?
It's not only the customers who are implementing it, also we learn from less. We learn from large-scale Scrum, everything what's out there, because we get some feedback, what's working, what's not working. Of course, we are learning a lot of companies who have the framework in place and what's not working for them, and we want to support that. But also organizations who don't have a lot of Agile. So it's basically, it's very hard to identify the sources. It's basically coming from all over the place. And that's interesting, because then you can integrate what's really working and what's helping organization. So having a look at the framework, who thinks that this looks complex? Anyone? Yeah, I don't have a problem, because it is a lot of information on there, right? It's a lot of stuff on here. And who of you is working in a large program, large complex program? Keep your hand up if it's going really well. Good? Congratulations. If you have that, there are some very good programs. But a lot of organizations are struggling. And maybe you have some more complex solutions for that. But let's clean up the whole thing a little bit. And it's about a 10 minutes walkthrough for those of you who have seen it before. We do a cleanup session, and the framework looks like that. Basically, empty. We have 3 levels. We have a team level, we have a program level, and we have a portfolio level. And everything is built on lean thinking, lean principles. So everything what you find in the framework, you can link that back to product development flow, Agile manifesto, or lean thinking principles. We have one concept which is called Agile Release Train. That's basically a team of Agile teams, a program. Several people working together. We typically say 5 to 12 people. Teams, sorry. And you also see that on the portfolio, there is a kind of a gap between portfolio programs and teams. So in a portfolio, you can basically have several of such agile release trains. And a release train doesn't exist without teams. So you have to have this kind of combination. But you can have a program, an agile release train, without a portfolio. These are elements we see a lot. So and then we start to add all the elements. We start with the people. One of the foundations, or the foundations of Agile, are the Agile teams. So we have Scrum or Kanban teams down there. There's just a new guidance article that how can you integrate Kanban teams in the SAFe framework. But also, we've seen up here, we need to have lean Agile leaders. Who has seen an Agile transformation in a big organization happening without leadership support? You have seen it? Yeah. I'm very interested to talk to you afterwards. Because
you didn't say it worked or
But you need to have kind of leadership support. They need to have an understanding, what is it? How does it work? How can I support my organization to do that? So it needs both of the sides. And the foundation of lean thinking, or the lean house, is leadership. So they need to be trained, they need to be educated. And we also have some additional roles. And that's one thing, when I'm going to organization, first thing, printing a big picture like we have on here, and putting it to a wall. Because one of the challenges we have is middle management. They don't see a role in Scrum. We have a team, we have a Scrum Master, we have a product owner. Where am I? Do I lose my job? And it really starts to get a lot of discussions and facilitates a lot of discussions if you have the framework up there and be able to talk about some of the roles which are on there. So additional roles on portfolio and program level, guidance roles like architecture, like UX, release management. We don't go into the details. We can spend the whole day on going into the roles. So we have the people who are doing the work, and we are used to backlogs. What's the work we are doing? It's captured in backlogs, team backlogs down here. But if you scale, several people are working out of the same backlog. You have a program level backlog up here, and also on the portfolio level, where we feel, where we visualize, make transparent the big initiatives and move them into the portfolio Kanban. So make them visible there helps us to make decisions.
I just ask, I'm curious as to why, or curious as to your definition of program and portfolio. You've got a backlog in the portfolio. I think that's interesting. But how do you define portfolio in the program? What's your definition of each of those?
Basically, the portfolio is a portfolio of programs. And what we have on there.
Separate sort of business, commercial goals you're trying to achieve, which are in the same perhaps organisation but are related, other than they just belong in the same organisation. So I was just curious as to the context of a backlog in that, you see, because that's how I see the portfolio. The backlog then suggests the prioritisation between programmes.
Mm-hmm.
The prioritisation within the programme happens at the programme backlog.
Yeah, there's some stuff is going directly to the Agile release trains. You see the program backlog, and we have hired the right people, product management, and a lot of work is directly going in there. So maybe not covered by the portfolio. But oftentimes you have cross-cutting initiatives. Maybe you have to upgrade your database, which is affecting all your Agile release trains. It's a big initiative which you want to make visible. You want to coordinate them, that initiative across the trains. And these are elements which are going up there, which when they are really cross-cutting, or they have a certain amount of money involved there. That's when they go up into the portfolio level. But there's a lot of stuff happening here on the train level. Product management. We have defined where we want to invest the money, and we have hired the right people, the right product manager, which can make decisions. They have the context. They can make the right decisions. Does that help?
Somewhat.
Okay. Yeah. Let's go back maybe, and then we can talk a little bit more detailed about that. So who worked in Scrum teams or have heard from a Scrum team that basically we are sprinting, and we are sprinting, and we are sprinting, but we don't know what's coming up, what's going on. Has anyone heard that? We don't have an overview what's going to happen. So we want to provide some vision roadmap. Again here, a portfolio vision. What do we want to achieve with the whole portfolio? We're investing a lot of money. What do we have there? And there's one element, strategic themes, which is connecting the SAFe portfolio to the outside world, to the business strategy. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the talk. So we have the teams with the backlogs, and now we have the execution engine. We have iterations, 2 weeks iterations on the team level. We do sprint planning, we do daily scrums, we do sprint demos, we do retrospective on the team level. What we know from standard scrum. But we have an additional cadence which is happening on the program level, which is typically 8 to 12 weeks. That's the program increment we see here, which we use for planning purposes. And then that's the whole cadence thing, the iterations. And one very, very interesting point is, you see here the box is growing. We build in increments the whole product. But we decouple planning from releasing. At the moment, in a lot of organizations, we have IT who's driving the date when we can release. Because when are we ready to do that? But now we can hand over this responsibility to the business world. When they say, okay, we have enough business value and the system is good, we can release that. So we can decouple a planning cadence from a releasing cadence with some additional practices we put in place, like continuous integration, test automation. But it's a very, very powerful tool when you implement SAFe. Code quality. We see agile architecture, continuous integration, test first. There's some pairing in there as well, but don't want to spend too much time. It's a key topic. And one of the most important aspects for me, relentless improvement, Kaizen, we need to inspect, we need to adapt. We need some metrics to see how are we doing. We need to have the problem-solving workshops that we can really address the problems we have and move forward, learn. So we see that here, inspect and adapt, retrospectives here on the team level. And that's one of the elements which need to be supported by the leaders, by lean agile leaders. That we really implement change and that we provide some bandwidth to do that. So we are executing, the engine is running. We can create a lot of stuff. If we don't make sure that we're working on the right stuff, we are not really creating value. So we need to have an understanding, economic prioritization, what's adding real value to the customer. And we do that with the value streams up here. How do we align our teams? What's our value stream? And also with WSJF, weighted shortest job first. That's a practice to how can you prioritize work, how can you compare, how can you define business value of the different backlog items, which is typically used on the program and portfolio level. And that brings us back to the big picture with a lot of icons in there. So we started from the clean, empty solution, and we quickly build it step by step. The teams, then we had the backlogs, we had the vision with that, we had the continuous improvement and economic prioritization. That's how the whole framework is built.
Michael, can you just, I'd like to hear your thoughts that one of the things, as you know, I was training on SBC, but one of the negatives that's out in the community at the moment is that it's extremely prescriptive. Can you throw your thoughts?
What would you say, what's prescriptive in here?
You don't do it all, it looks like. To a lay person, that looks like you have to put all that in place for this wonderful success that you started with, things
Mm-hmm.
We'll never get all of those people on board. We won't even get the people, for instance. How can I get these people doing this? So it's out in the general community. And
Yeah.
we've seen it a lot.
Oh yeah.
And Les and Dad are suffering similar sorts of things. But I'd be interested in your thoughts on about the prescriptive. I have an opinion, but I'd like to hear yours.
I think a certain level of prescriptiveness is certainly good, but you have to apply it the right way. And when we look just at Scrum, do you see Scrum as prescriptive?
It used to be described that way.
Yeah, and it's you have the 3 roles. You have a 15 minutes daily stand-up. It's basically also defining some practices, which is very, very helpful for teams. And now we have a starting position for a team of team. And I think the big part here is you need to, it's not working if you're just picking some of the elements and you're trying that. So it's a system and it works together. But there are a lot of variables in there to really adjust. And if you believe you can just take that, apply it in the organization and you will be successful, it's not working. So you need to think. Maybe an example. We say SAFE. That's what we do in the trainings. It's for programs for about 50 to 125 people. One agile release train. We can go up. For example, we at Scaled Agile, we are about 25 people, 20, and we are using the framework to plan our work. So we are adjusting it to our needs, that it helps us to create the good quality, to create transparency, to align and to execute programs. So I've just been back to Boulder 2 weeks ago and we did the release planning. The process I will show you in a couple of minutes. We did that and it helped us. But we always think what was working, what's not working, how do we adjust? And we have, when you see the team level, on here you see Scrum, right? Scrum teams. We have organizations, they said, we have Kanban teams in our organization because we have a lot of maintenance, unpredictable stuff. How can we integrate that? Sure, no problem. So maybe we still need to have some synchronization at the end of iteration, also with Kanban teams, that we can manage the dependencies, but we can integrate Kanban teams into the framework. So I think it's to answer your question, it's a helpful idea of practices, but there's a lot of flexibility how to apply it, and it requires a lot of thinking to apply it successfully. Thinkers who challenge the situation, understand the principles behind, and to make a successful implementation. Just using it, implementing like that will not work. Good. Any other questions just at the moment? Because it should be a little bit... Oh, good.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I want to challenge a couple of things if that's okay. And that's not from a position of knowing SAFe, it's just, I guess it's the way we learn, isn't it? We look at something and try and challenge a model to establish it. And just as some context, I've sort of run some large-scale agile transformations and programs, but that's kind of like from first principles working out to go, so I wouldn't profess to say all the answers, but I've been through that experience. So I guess to your point about prescriptive, one of the things that makes me uncomfortable here, actually first of all, one of the things that makes me uncomfortable, I like the definition of stories and then features. I like the concept of minimum marketable features, something that adds value to the organisation. That's a really powerful pattern. I guess a couple of things that make me uncomfortable is as soon as it's the same feature system at program level, not at a team level, for example, it seems a bit odd. Whereas as long as the feature's ready, why couldn't we ship it? And then the way that you have this whole agile release train makes me uncomfortable as well, because actually as long as you've got something which is
Yeah.
And this feels like it's sort of dragging you away from that a little bit.
I would say, and that's one thing I want to add here. If you can build a product with one team, 5 to 9 people, that's typically a Scrum team, and the whole product can build by that team, I would never use a framework like that. But
yeah, you said what you mean by product. When I worked on a program with 250 plus people, which providing the whole sort of platform across web and mobile, with lots of different services that are given to a user.
With a lot of dependencies, right?
Well, not as much as you think in terms of the way it depends how you think of it. If you look at the way you consume software and things, it doesn't have to be one big app, does it? It can be a sort of series of small bits. But actually, it's a whole holistic thing you're using. And this feels like it's like one big system view of the world, as opposed to, I think, more when you look at more digital architecture, the way we're actually looking at the user journey somebody has, how you break that up into little bits. It's more smaller. So
when we can break it up, we should break it up. But maybe.
So what's on a trading system where you're changing, the way you're charting the things, so you can daily, or frequently, at the same time as where you might execute a trade change, or where you look at a blotter or whatever. Now, do you view that as one big product, or do you view that as lots of interactions? Because all of those things will be released separately without any great big centralized thing, because you actually had understanding, well, actually here's a new type of chart, and that can get released, and it doesn't have to coordinate with what you're trading. But it's, do you view that as a product, or do you view that as a
and that's one of the discussions we are having before we are starting that. And that's going up here. What is our value stream? What are we creating? How can we group the work? Do we need several teams working together? What's the level of dependencies? And that's some upfront work to define that. To make sure that we are not building extremely complex systems, because we want to simplify. And I will show you some dependency boards afterwards. One of the results of the release planning is basically an indication how many dependencies do you have in an organization. And do we have external dependencies? Do you have internal one? How can we create a more simple architecture, which help us to do that?
I think that's more than a process. I think actually talking about how you decompose architecture simply, and how you organise around things, how you understand commercial goals separately, gives you a simple model. That's kind of what I've learned. That's what we're doing for the last few years. And this feels like it's attractive to a big organisation, but they have a big system view of the world, and they put that in place and actually lose the opportunity to move towards simplifying. When some people say dependencies, that mean many different things.
It's dependencies, but also if we have that in place, because if we have this complex system, this inspect and adapt gives us an opportunity to improve. And sometimes I want to start an organization, even if it's complex, and this helps me to make things transparent and maybe to simplify some of the elements. So, yeah.
Do you want a big complex system? Actually, you want to cover a whole range of services and a broad, deep set of services, but actually this lends itself to a big system view of the world, which I think is.
I mean, I would just to comment on that. I see it as it's assuming top-down stuff collectively. It's coming from a top-down paradigm. There are other ones, right? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a thing.
Where's the money coming from?
Well, it depends on the organisation. So that's what I would say.
It depends on the organisation.
The money comes from the release of features, because features add values, and features are things of commercial value. I think organisations must have clear vision, commercial vision, and goals, their technical vision, how they can achieve it.
Yeah.
But I think that the way that having the whole integrated, it's the release train, it's the whole pulled together of things. I think it feels, and it feels initially is an unnecessary prescriptive constraint.
Yeah. So my view of that, given that obviously I was looking at given an SPC coach, and I do treat it much like Scrum in the old days. I've been involved in Scrum. So the release train part of it, it's hidden away at release on demand. When it was first created, your view would have been exactly that, and you went up in arms. It felt like there was some sort of waterfall thing going on.
Okay.
But you are releasing on demand still. So the thing that always
Could a team create a collection of stories and release it? Because a team got product owner.
We have organizations releasing every 7 minutes
So when do you have
to production.
What is a release train?
So if you wish, it's a release plan. If for a business to track, are we on track? So it's a bigger version of tracking.
Right. So how we realise that?
Yeah.
In simplistic form.
Right.
And oftentimes,
The roles that are architecture, so it feels like it's an architecture
Yeah.
But that's not that.
It's not, and sometimes you have systems where several teams need to work together. Yeah.
I think if you're dealing with sort of maybe legacy architecture and things as well, I get that. But
Yeah.
it doesn't like an aspiration.
Maybe,
Everything is scaling.
maybe,
Values and behaviours and scrum.
maybe we want to.
Sorry.
We want to move on to let some other people, but I'm happy to come back to that question afterwards.
Honestly, I'm a huge advocate of SAFe. I think bottom art is a brilliant articulation of kind of best of breed agile that's going on out there. I think it's a great way of presenting it to senior management. My concern is at the portfolio level. My question is, and I'll ask the question and then I'll explain why I asked the question. My question is, the portfolio level really lets SAFe down. Yeah? The reason I say this is because when Inbar was doing the description, the constraint that you're actually operating towards is a financial constraint, and it's based on the budgets that you're given, that determines the release rate. Now, from a practitioner's perspective, having spent the last 2 years implementing a portfolio level kind of implementation, there's something called Brooks Law, mythical amendment, that you have to work with, and what you have to do is you have to work with the constraints of the teams and potentially individuals with the team. And so the way SAFe presented, the way Inbar presented it, was basically constrained the budget. You gave an amount of budget, and then you went off and had a happy plan with the release rate. In a real portfolio scenario, what you find is you may have a budget, but you can't get at the people and the teams
To do it.
you need. And so you actually need to use theory of constraints to identify what's the optimal delivery based on the constraints, which are the teams and not the financial budget. So my question to you is, who actually came at the portfolio level? Because as I say, from a practitioner's perspective, it's actually the failure state that we normally start with.
So when we talk about where we start and where the portfolio part is coming from, and when we look at the adaption of SAFe, most organizations start on the program level, not bothering about the portfolio at all. When you look at, you can have a very excellent and agile portfolio, but you are not agile in execution. What is the value you have? So you need to have an agile execution, and you need to have a good execution level that you can move up to the portfolio. And I just had a discussion last week, yeah, where someone told me, we had a discussion with management, we have a perfect portfolio management. We don't need to change anything. Our portfolio management is perfect. But the programs are not executing. Does that sound right? So if the programs are not executing, maybe we need to adjust, maybe there's a lot of demand, we are overloading the teams, or we are changing tasks or initiatives, whatever. So it felt a little bit strange, and at the end it's one whole system. It needs to work together, portfolio and the execution of that. So what we see is really moving up, having good programs, and then moving up to the portfolio level, and then maybe we come to the position where what Inbar mentioned with funding the agile release trains. I think that's what you're referring to, right? So we want to go away from the project budgeting. Maybe one of the examples, is anyone working for a bank? Financial service, good. Do you have any promotions? Promotions for credit cards. So how does that typically work? So business wants to do a promotion. What's happening then?
They make an affiliate deal with the company, and they get some deal with that other company to so that if you buy one of their products or they whatever, and you work out some commercial deal, and then you need a lot of transfer of data between the two when someone's bought something, so that you can then give that value or reward back to your customer.
Yeah. And then they have the idea, and they come to IT and request a certain number of people because they have some money to realize that promotion, that project, right?
Yeah.
So they inform the people, the IT people. So we execute the promotion, we deploy it, and then maybe the IT people are going back to the IT pool. That's a pattern we see a lot. Does it sound familiar? So, and maybe the next promotion is coming up about a month later. And we have some new budget. Nice, we can do something. Next promotion. We need some people from IT. Typically, you don't get the same people who already have the knowledge about some of the promotion. You do the project, and it's kind of, we run, we stop, we wait, we get some new people, we run again. But promotion is one of the things a lot of organizations are really doing over the year. It's a constant, it's kind of a value stream. That was one financial services organization mentioned that last week. We have one value stream, which is promotion. We basically have a budget for that. That's the number of promotions we run, and we have a team working on that. So business is funneling new ideas from promotion in there, and they are executed by the agile release train in that case, and it's an ongoing thing. It's going on this year, next year, and so on. We are doing promotions on a regular basis. And that's when the funding maybe moves. Okay, we fund an agile release train, a group of people who are executing these promotions.
So is it that what you've got is you've got long-lived teams, which instead of taking the teams and the resource to the work, what you're looking at is taking the work to the long-lived teams. So these guys, they're working on stuff all the time, and you're feeding in this work.
Yeah.
So capacity is actually managed as a constant. I guess you could grow extra release streams, extra trains, but
you can increase or decrease. Yeah.
A constant resource pool. What you've got is that your budget is literally defining what work goes into a constant resource pool. Is that kind of sum it up?
I think you mentioned the right word. We bring the work to the people and not the people to the work. And when you start teams, you typically have all this effort to do the team building, to do forming, norming, storming, and performing. You go through this curve. If you have a more stable team and you just funnel new work in there, you have a lot of benefits because the team already has a way to communicate. By the way, little story here. It was not related to SAFe, but I once worked with a consulting company and we introduced Scrum. And after the first sprint in the retrospective, they brought up the point that they are having too many private conversations. Showed me a high level of trust in that organization because, we think we could do more, but we are just talking a lot. And they were sitting before, they had individual offices, and we put them together in one big room, so they had a lot of conversation. And we then said, okay, we'll just observe what's going to happen. So I think about 3 sprints later, we went back and we said, okay, we had that issue. So we want to see what happened to that. And the team members said, it's not a problem anymore. We don't have so many private discussions. We really do that in the breaks and during lunch and whatever. But what we realized is that it really helped us to get a common communication channel. So the private conversation helped us to better understand each other and helped us to be better when we also have business discussions. So, and that's one of the reasons we understand, we know how people are working, we can build a trust in a team, which is typically leading to higher performing teams, making some fun.
So to answer my question, which was, basically, if you look at the portfolio level, the constraint is financial. Yeah. And as a practitioner, I know that doesn't work, and that it's actually the people in the teams that form your constraint. If you decide you want to invest more, you've got perhaps 3 months that you can actually invest more. But given the decision you're making there, so the question was, who designed the portfolio level? Because from a practitioner's perspective, as I say, that's the failure state you normally go into if you're doing kind of work at the portfolio level in an organisation.
That without we've probably got time to do with, but straight away my reaction, the question I would ask you is, why is the people restrained?
Well, alternatively, what we can say is, right, I've got 10 million, I want 200 Java developers that I haven't got on my books there who actually know those particular components, can actually work on that particular code base, understand that particular domain. That doesn't happen build up in the next 3 months. But this is what I'm saying, because using finance as the constraint to actually make your decisions doesn't actually get you there. You actually need to look at what teams you've got, and the problem that you get, one that we've had to solve was we'd have some teams who were getting asked for like 400% capacity, and other teams who got nothing requested.
Yeah.
But,
So
What you're saying is removing all those dependencies is a huge task, and you can't just have teams who work equally.
yeah, teams are not fundamental. I mean, this is,
So it might be a
this is
good
what
place.
we're
Might be a good place to get to.
and that can happen that maybe sometimes when we see release trains which have spare capacity, sometimes we adjust the budget of certain trains and move some teams to another train. I've seen that happen, successfully happen.
What I found is that in some companies, the management would like to deliver on the Agile approach, but to change environment in which such Agile delivery approach should work, they don't like to change. For example, financial department, they are planning budgets and requesting the way how they are requesting information for next year, for example, how they split budgets. They would like to keep the same way as they did 10 years before. They don't like to change. And this is what I found, that such type of budgeting planning is a little bit different in some companies they did before. And financial department, top management from financial departments have usually quite strong power, influence, and they don't like to change, and nobody would like to go to talk with them about different approach. I think here a lot of problems come,
Basically,
coming back to this budget.
Yeah.
I never had a problem with finance. The main thing is that you respect them, you engage them early, you train them and coach them. You normally find if you do that, they're your biggest advocates, because they can see that their life's going to be easier.
Mhm.
You know, and but in actual fact, what happens is once you get past the finance hurdle, you then have to go and help the HR department get ready for this huge kind of changes in demand in terms of bringing people in or kind of letting people go.
Yeah.
So the actual issue there, the constraint is the same for sort of any programming method, isn't it? The constraint is always with knowledge work, the knowledge share, the upskilling and the product and the environment that you're bringing new people in to satisfy whatever it is you need to do. I think one of the difference for me is if we go back down to the Scrum idea, that used to be the same in Scrum as well, where we used to ask for a fixed team. And then that was always a problem, and I'd have somebody in America, they'd give me a team, and there'd be like people scattered all around the world and call that a team. And I think it's fair to say I've never seen the portfolio operated yet, ever. And as Michael said, I think if we're really honest in the community, it's only now at program level is being taken seriously by organisations to try and scale out a little bit. And I think that constraint is always going to be there, and I agree with you, it isn't just around budget, which is your main point. There are a number of constraints to consider, but there will always be that portfolio there.
Yeah.
The difference being now, what we're trying to do is say people aren't just dropping something off and saying, right, get on with it, work out something to do. What we're trying to say is bring that Scrum idea through to the top and say, well, we can do that, but look, if we add it to it, this is what happens down here. So it's like the fail early idea.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I'm a huge supporter of SAFE because I think below that divide, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think what's been done, as I say, my concern is I'm not sure who's writing the stuff above the line.
It's a good point.
But the lack of experience kind of shines through.
Yeah.
And there are lots of groups that have solved it. You know, it sounds counterintuitive, but there are people who solved it at the top level, but not at the bottom level.
Yeah. And that's one of the challenges. And so when you start on top, you're selling it there, you need to have the programs, the trains running.
Well, Simon's getting Tony, and I'm going to help Tony when we get it arranged today.
Hopefully quite soon we'll have a discussion on that. And,
Cool.
We did that's an 18-month journey, but there's another bank that's not too far away from here that kind of adapted it quite quickly as well.
Cool.
Okay.
Good. Want to head on?
Can I just ask one really stupid question? And it is stupid because this is my introduction was always that disparity of people who were using version 1 and version 2. Now, if you've gone from version 1 to version 3 in the space of 3 years, and you're going to have version 4 sometime this year, presumably, then what happens when people, how do you make sure that everybody's talking version 4 or version 3? Because it sounds to me like there's a lot of change that happens in the different versions as you learn. How do you get that knowledge out to practitioners effectively?
And I think the releasing of the product, that's one of the nice things about developing on cadence and plan on cadence and release on demand. You can build that based on your audience. So maybe, for example, internally, we at Scaled Agile, we're creating trainings. Every 2 weeks, we basically have new stuff in our training material. Now we have some SBCs here. What would be your reaction if you release every 2 weeks a new version of the training and you have to understand it, download it? Would you like that? No. Some may would like it, some would not. So we put in a release cadence, and that was based on feedback that we have major or releases every 3 months. So gives the trainers some time to adapt the material. So internally, we have the capabilities to release more often and have these changes. And we are testing stuff when we're running the training. But to the outside, we are listening to our customers and see what's the level they can adapt. And maybe we will find better ways to do that, how we can release more often. And I think that's what's the audience? How do you do that? How much training do you need to introduce new versions?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, actually.
It is.
In fact, one of the things that came out of the SBC training when I was with Dean was that he said that when they released the latest version of the framework, quite a few of the customers freaked because they was like, oh, I'm working on version 2. And actually now when you go on the website, you can actually see there's a button that says, are you looking for version 2? You click on that and it will show you the big picture from the previous version so that people can still, the information is still available, you can work on whichever version so that things aren't sort of, the rug isn't being pulled from underneath the feet, as it were.
Which is an important element.
Of course, the consequent issue is at what point do you stop supporting version 2, or does it not matter?
Yeah. And that's more application lifecycle management, which is an additional element you may bring to the framework depending on which kind of business you're in. If you're a cloud provider, maybe you have that topic not as hard if you are selling operating systems or whatever, where you have a life cycle of 20 years. So that's really depending on the context. And I think that's why... Sorry?
I mean, for you, at what point do you stop retaining any kind of knowledge of an old version?
We typically...
It's not an issue over 4 years, but at some point...
So we typically support the old version. It will be up until version 4, and then basically the framework is out there anyway. You can use it. It's a concept. It's not a software. What we have there, it's an idea. So I don't know if we have the right example for that.
No, another interesting thing is about how you actually roll these programs out. And I know that Dean's very, the message is very much a sort of a big bang approach. Sort of like you've got to kind of change the organisation top down. And I'm very much in favour of myself is actually rolling out a program in an agile way. So rather than sort of planning this out over a long period of time, massive resistance to changing the program and the way that it's rolled out, I actually like to look at the actual change program itself as a backlog. It doesn't sit in this picture. It's like what are the things that we need to do in an organisation to actually move towards this, to get these impediments removed to make this happen. And that change program also has its own backlog. So the actual implementation of this can be an agile implementation as well, which adapts. So as the versions increase, I would expect the organisations that I work with to actually slowly move and adapt towards the latest thinking, not just from the framework, but from the other tools as well, and to have that sort of agile approach in adoption.
That fits, doesn't it, with people saying start the program, start the team, and the next bit.
Yeah, and by the way, I've seen change programs, who used SAFe to implement this change, because also there we need a lot of alignment, transparency on there. So it's not only used in software development. So let's have a quick look. I think we have about 15 minutes left, right? Because we want to have some time afterward to discuss, and we have Andy, Manuel, Simon, and some other SBCs here to have these deeper discussions. But what I want to show you is some experience and one of the fascinating parts for me, which is the release planning event. Who had the opportunity to attend a 2-day release, Safe Art release planning? How was that?
Excellent. I did it with government.
Perfect.
On a program of 15 teams.
And basically, when I was in the training and heard it for the first time, it was, yeah, you do a big room planning, you have 100 people in a room planning together. It was this will not work. And I had to experience it, and it was so eye-opening to see that and to see what's going on. So what's happening in there, one release train, if you have defined the value stream, every 8 to 12 weeks, the whole train meets to plan for 2 days. So everyone attends in person. Why do we need to have everyone there? Alignment. Remember, north. We want everyone have an understanding where are we heading to. Very, very powerful tool. So basically that's happening for 2 days. And we go in with a vision, and we go in with the top backlog items. And then something is happening in there for the 2 days, and we have 2 main outputs. One is objectives, and the other one is the program board. So for me, first, this sounded 2 days. What's the structure behind that? It sounds like chaos, and yeah, that's why I had to experience it, and it's basically a very, very disciplined process, how you do that. So I was with an organization, financial services in the US, and they had offshoring in India. So we did it on 2 locations, this planning. So they had about 40 people in the US and 40 people in India. We were connected to do that. And the morning is basically briefings. First thing. By the way, when have you talked to your CEO the last time? Who talked to the CEO in the last month? How big is your company?
Well, the 27th biggest company in the world, so...
Cool. But it's great to have that. But oftentimes, you don't have the chance to talk to these high-level executives. And if they are coming to the planning session, it's really, really motivating for the people to have that. So typically, the first one is business context, and I had a CIO coming in. We always try to get the highest level executive you can have. In that case, large organization, CIO. And he was coming in, he had about 20 minutes because he said he needed to leave. But he talked to his people and he said, guys, I meet my peer CIOs every month. And we talk about Agile a lot. And all these other CIOs are telling me Agile is not working. They're struggling with that. And then I'm silent because I know it's working in our organization. We have proven it before, and we will prove it with that. So he just put a lot of motivation in the teams, and you've seen the people smiling. And then he told them also, and that's very interesting, because they will tell nobody that they are doing Agile and safe. They said, okay, that's our secret, that's our competitive advantage. I don't want that we spread the word, because that's our advantage. And this created so much energy in that room, just being able to talk, to ask some questions, and to get the attendance of the CIO in there. Huge energy. So it went on. Second part, product solution vision, where we have 3 product managers in that case coming in. First invited some customers, some field agents, to talk to the group and transferring the energy, and they were so happy that they had the chance to talk to the developers, because otherwise they had to wait about half a year or a year until they've seen some results when they put in some requests, and they were involved in that planning. Product management talked about where are we heading to, top 10 features. We had the architects. In that case, we had 2 architects coming in, giving a kind of the outline of the architecture, guidelines. Where do we want to head to? What do we want to do? And so the morning was basically briefings, giving information, aligning the people. And that's also part which, when you go on, this part here will be a little bit shorter. So you can spend some of the time for other activities. Then you have planning context, what do we want to do? And then the teams, these 100 people we have in the room, they take their features, they break out, and they break down the features into the stories, into the user stories in that session. We are not going into the details of acceptance criteria at that point, but we want to have a high-level understanding, what kind of stories do we have, a feeling for the estimate in here. And at the end, at 4, each group, each team is presenting their plans, their objectives for the next 3 months, and their risks. And then you have about 100 people peer reviewing these plans. And I've seen in so many situations that, oh, you've planned that one. We had that in our plan as well. Maybe we can remove it because it's duplicate work which we have in there. Or asking the right questions. Have we thought about this one? Managing dependencies in here. So the presentation is to everyone. And then management goes off, review and problem-solving workshop, can be some heated discussions because we need to remove some of the impediments in there. We need to make sure that the teams can finish their plans, and the plan is basically for 3 months. Not on a detailed user story level, but on a high level, what can we achieve in these 3 months? So management needs to make some adjustments. I've seen situations where we have added a team, so they were able to go outside and say, okay, we don't have enough capacity, but we need that. Can we get another team involved to support us in there? So some very interesting discussions going on in there. So then people go home, sleep, and the night is always pretty good because you can recover and you start thinking. So the next morning you are coming in and management presents the changes they've decided the night before.
Can I just interrupt you?
Sure.
So my experience on that, just to share an experience, is that the first day actually will scare the life out of everybody. That actually you find out that the plan that you thought would be in place, even if you've done a number of upfront work on it, you find that the plan doesn't fit. And the main reason that happens is because suddenly you actually put all people in the room.
You get a better understanding.
So what actually
The overload.
happens is the night before the management thing. So the idea is that management stays at the same time to fix that plan, ready for this session in the morning for the adjustments.
And maybe sometimes we have to remove some of the features. I've seen situations where some features changed because we had a different understanding. Oh, we cannot do everything. Then the priorities change. They can be very long sessions.
If you had a environment, a few hundred people, whatever, where between teams there wasn't a great deal of dependencies, let's assume, I mean, probably none, okay? Is there value in this?
Yes.
What is the value of having a 3-month breakdown of stories, commercial value, 3 months if you don't have dependencies? What's the explaining the value?
If they don't have dependencies and if they don't work at the same product, no, you don't do it.
So because I think
but
going back to your definition of product and things, I think is an interesting challenge to this framework.
It's like anything, if you're scaling up more and more teams, how do they have any dependencies? And of course, it is that goal.
If you can think of your there's different types of dependencies, and I think if you can put energy into minimising that as much as possible,
Yeah.
you have a linear environment.
But this,
Yeah.
this
I'm just worried that this draws you into thinking so you don't tackle those other root causes.
well, the
You've
other,
got a framework that solves this other problem.
Yeah.
the other way to view it is this is a mechanism for creating that decoupling.
Yep.
So if you
And
start with an organisation,
Okay, so much pain you sort of actually go through and challenge your hands.
Yes.
well,
Yes,
that's what
exactly.
I'm hearing from the experience. Right?
And you will see some pictures from real life release plannings and how many dependencies you have in there. You will not believe how many situations we had where management was shocked just seeing it, making it transparent. And then, okay, we need to reduce complexity. Maybe we have technical debt in our system. We can reduce that. Maybe we can realign our teams and our organization a little bit. That's basically making it transparent and helping to improve.
So the aspiration is doing this for a period of time, after a year or something like that, then this session becomes very light and actually you have to remodel your business. Because that makes more sense, because that's actually the sort of
In some cases, yes.
In the old days of that,
Yeah.
and then we got better and better and better at it, and we fixed our teams, and knowledge was built into
Sure.
it. And when we first did it, a new product turned up, they sort of wanted loads and thought it could be done, and then we found out all the other bits in between, didn't we?
Right.
And that's like, the beginning of this is that, and it gets better as time goes on.
Yeah. And in some situation, you have bigger systems where you have some dependencies. There are areas around, but if you can simplify, yes. Good. Sorry? Good. So we have the planning adjustments, and then we have the second team breakout session. So the team go out and adjust their plans based on the good night's sleep, all the ideas in the shower in the morning, on what they've heard, the changes from management, and what they've learned the previous day when they did the draft plans review. So they work through it, and then they present their plans again with the objectives, with the plan, with the risks which are still there, which are not addressed. So then we are looking at the program risks. There is a technique called roamed, resolved, owned, accepted, mitigated, to address all of these risks which are still there. And then you get a confidence vote, and that's basically typically done as fist of 5. Yes, we can achieve these objectives. Yeah, we should be able to do it. Yeah, maybe not, or no, I don't think so. And you do that with each individual team, confidence vote, so each team member has to vote. And if you have less than 3, you want to understand why you want to have a discussions, and maybe you want to go into replanning. And then you ask the whole room, 100 people you have in that room, are we able to land this program increment at the end of 3 months? With the information we have, and we understand that there can be changes, because environment can change, flying, weather can change. But based on the information we have today, that's what we are going to achieve.
I don't think it's down to 9-11. It says business owners circulate and assign business value to team objectives. Surely business value is the very start of this process.
That would be a very deep topic, and I'm happy to discuss it afterwards. It's basically a part of decentralized control. It's not the same business value as what you have in mind. It's one of the techniques we use for decentralized decision making to assign value to these objectives, where you maybe have some elements in there which are not related to a feature. But we would go into very, very much details if we go in there, and we would spend about half an hour to do that. So I'm happy to spend the time afterwards with you, but if it's okay, we would move on in this case. Thank you. So we plan, and when we have commitment, we move on, do a retrospective. What was good, what wasn't good, how can we move on? And one of the outcomes, depending on the organization. It's a difficult question. So I've seen situations where the RTE was an SPC and there was a coach to support them.
How many teams?
6 teams. It's depending. If you don't have experienced teams and maybe you want to have a little bit more support, we have organizations that have internally 60 SPCs and they get additional external SPCs to support them. Especially the first PI, and that's we don't have time to talk about implementation, but especially at the beginning you want to have the support and you can remove it over time because it's more automated. It's kind of a habit of the organization.
Is there any analysis into SA training to success? So you have SMC, you can get briefing all this and all that kind of stuff, but actually getting more people certified versus the success of the...
It's not about the certification, but I have some placements here. If someone is interested, just pick some up. You have the big picture on here. And let's save implementation 1, 2, 3. First one is we need to train change agents, and that's the SPCs. And then train everyone in the context of that train. And the certification is not the important part, but people need to be trained in leading safe, more for the leaders, and Scrum XP for the practitioners. And then launch trains. So train everybody, launch trains. These are the two elements. And we don't know how many companies have adapted SAFe. I've just learned from one who, they went to the framework. By the way, if you go to scaledagileFramework.com, if you see that, you can click on all the items and you get the detailed information on here, like this agenda. If you click on release planning, you can get that. And they just implemented from what they've learned. They haven't got training, they haven't trained their people, and they failed. But I've not heard from an organization who really trained everybody, got the leaders on board, trained the people, and launched trains who failed. So no statistics, but it's certainly helpful if people understand what it is. That's also, we have partners here. We have people from IJI. One of our partners, Neil, is here. Do we have someone from Agile 8?
I'm an associate.
Good. So we have several partners who are basically supporting organization in doing that, and we can see if we can get some more detailed information. But we don't know all the implementations out of this. So the program board, one of the outcomes, and I will jump to a real life situation here. What we have here is the sprints. In a PI planning, we plan for 4 sprints. That's also part of the thinking process. How many sprints do we need to have? How long is our PI? We have the sprints here, and we have the teams here. Blue are features, and the red yarn is basically the dependencies. So now, sorry? The pink posted are what is the dependency? Is it the user story, part of the user story, or what needs to be done? But basically what we see here, a lot of dependencies. And that's what you see in a lot of organizations as a starting point. Huge number of dependencies. And if you just assign a cost for the identification of a dependency, which can be quite significant. We've done that in a training. Some teams came up with a cost for dependencies. And when you do release planning in a big room, I'm a team back here doing my plan, and the other team is planning back there. And I don't need to set up a meeting. I can just walk over there. Okay, look, I have this problem. We have a dependency here. We are discussing it. We agree on something. We put it on the wall here, and the dependency is visible. Very, very powerful element to do that. And that's the part where you have leadership coming in and seeing the number of dependency, and then see, okay, what can we do to reduce them? Do we need to simplify our architecture? Do we need to rearrange teams? One of the outcomes of this was that an organization changed their team setting. So basically they had some teams split it between, so in one team they had people from the UK and from India and from New York. So they started to co-locate the teams. And then make sure that where they had some teams with a lot of dependencies, to co-locate them also in India in that case. Just to make sure that you can remove the dependencies, start to resolve them.
This line at the bottom, why only being fixed?
That's in that case, there was a bottleneck. They had a database administrator which supported all of them, and they put it up there. And basically, that's also an observation. There are a lot of dependencies in the same sprint. You want to avoid that whenever possible. And that's also what we see if we have external vendors, external suppliers. Maybe we have a representative there, and we have a swim lane for them when they deliver a big part. So, okay, the vendor is delivering here in sprint 2, and the team here needs to implement that delivery from the vendor. So you want to have them integrated and to make these dependencies visible as well. Very, very, very powerful outcome of the release planning to see what kind of dependencies you have in an organization. So that's another one. Some real-life example. That's one value stream which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 5 teams. So they have 5, not 5 teams, 5 release trains. It's a really huge system. And they had dependencies across the trains, even more complexity. So they had one board for cross-train dependencies, an additional board for the internal train dependencies.
So does that rely on 5 trains planning at the same time?
Yeah.
Right. So that's 500 people.
Yeah.
2 days in sports centres.
Yeah. So you sometimes need to have the right infrastructure to do that. You need some more SPCs in that case. But it's basically very, very interesting, and I want to jump to one slide here.
So can I just be clear then? So your perspective on this is you go through this process to highlight the nonsense and you get out of that mess for the future, not that this is a repeating thing. Because I guess my slight concern is people say, oh yeah, that's how we do it, and just repeatedly sort of do the chaos as opposed to simplifying. So it strikes me that that's not, if you were starting fresh, you wouldn't have a organisation's technical or whatever solutions, products, whatever you call it, services like that. So is it about exposing and solving it, or do you actually believe, and I'm not quite sure if there's slightly, I think we may have slightly perspective, do you actually believe that's a good pattern for, for a good, a healthy environment?
It can help to simplify an environment. In some situations, you have dependencies. You have that situation. It's not always just, you cannot remove it in all the situations. If you build complex systems, like, think about John Deere. They build a combine. They have a hardware team. They have a mechanical team. They have software teams. They need to work together. So they have dependencies. So in some situations, that can help to remove some of them. But we build complex systems, and there are dependencies. There is a high level. If we can remove them, fine, perfect. But it helps us to identify them and go into inspect and adapt and see what's going on. So the last one I want to show, I already mentioned, train everybody and launch release trains. One of the things we see a lot of success is basically a one-week launch. Basically, you have identified your release train, your value stream, your release train, and then you get all these people together for the first release planning. You do 2 days of training of the practitioners, Safe Scrum XP training, to rebaseline them. Also, if they've already done some Scrum training, it's sometimes surprising how much knowledge is there and how much knowledge is missing. But just rebaselining is helpful. And also doing, every time I'm going to a training, the same training, I learn something new. So it helps me to move forward. So 2 days of training where you work in the teams. It's a lot of team building involved. And then you have 2 days of release planning, what we have here, what we've just went through on the agenda. So you basically have a very, very fast start. On Friday the last time, some orientation for Scrum Master and product owners, or some tool orientation, test-driven development training we had in there. And it's a powerful way to start your first release train. And I had a story that was in an organization, and typically when you start that the first day, Monday morning, people are sitting in like this, not really a smiling face. And then as you start working with them, they open up, they try to get it. And I had one guy coming to me on Friday before we left. He was 50 years old, and he came to me and told me, I'm working in this organization for 30 years now. I don't have much more years until retirement, and I've just planned to sit in and just let it go, so just work. But now I'm here, and I've experienced that, and I've never experienced that in this organization. So much energy going on, so much change in a time. And I have so much energy now and motivation. I'm really looking forward to my next years working in that company. And that was really, really rewarding to see that after the 1 week launch we've done in there. And I think there are a lot of additional questions. And I think
what we could do is we could break now. We've got a bunch of pizzas that have just turned up, and any more questions, I reckon we can sort of one-to-one, just network and talk and eat some pizza.
Genau. And we have SBCs here. Talk to them. Come to me. I'm very interested to talk about the detailed challenges. That's learnings as well. Thank you very much, and have a good day.